Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider Bill Ryder, who I must commend on his sartorial choice this morning.
Good
an
work.
Intuit Dome shirt.
I wore this for you.
I love
I
it.
was gonna throw this away. It is so comfortable. It's amazing.
Tell everybody what you said it might be made out of.
I said, "What is this made of? Money?" It's just so it's like a blanket. It's amazing.
It's only the finest for Steve Ballmer's people. Where did you get that? They gave it to you when you were there or what?
Yeah, it must have been the opener because I've been to a bunch of. I'm assuming they didn't give it to me on a random one-off, but one of the days I showed up and there was a media welcome thing and there's a shirt and I always throw that stuff away.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, I'll throw it in the old backpack and give it to my kid. But when I threw it in the backpack and I touched it, it was like touching the golden fleece. It was so comfy. Then later I got home, I put it on. I'm like, okay, I can't really wear it out that much, but I'll wear. I saw it today in the closet. I'm like, I'm gonna wear this for John. Because you love that place.
I love that place. They really did it right. I don't know how clued in you are to the Sixers arena situation, but yesterday
I saw the reversal. Yeah.
Yeah, they pulled the old switcheroo. They were trying to get an arena built downtown for like the last 2 years. They went through this whole process. And then yesterday they pulled the rug out from underneath the city and decided they were going to repartner with Comcast and keep it in the sports stadium district in South Philly. So it's this whole big to do. And I was just thinking about that as you're wearing the Intuit Dome, because the Clippers did it right and the Sixers are, forever and a day, the Sixers. But we'll get into that because I've got some overreactions to discuss with you a little bit later in the show. We'll do those. But today we're going to do a full Western Conference check-in. The Kings are the hottest team in the NBA. The Nugs and the Suns have both won 3 in a row. I'm bullish on one of those teams, less so on the other, Bill. Then we've got Wemby versus LeBron from last night. We'll get into the Spurs and the Lakers, and then we'll finish with Team of the Night. But first, we've had this conversation about who's the second best team in the Western Conference. Well, number 2 versus number 3 last night, Bill, was a barn burner. Such a fun game. The Rockets came back from down 13 to win by 2 at home. They are now 3-0 versus the Grizz this season. Jalen Green went off 42 points on 18 shots. My guy, Amin Thompson, you know how much I love him. He was absolutely everywhere. Bill, I keep mentioning the Rockets. They're second place in the Western Conference, kind of with a bullet now. They've won 4 in a row, 7 of their last 10. They're 2 up on the Grizzlies. Basically, forget about Oklahoma City. They're number 1. They're 2 up on the Grizzlies for second place. They're 3 up on the Nugs. They're 4.5 up on the Mavs. They're 5 up on the Clippers. Bill, join me here. I know that you have some skepticism about their offense, rightly so, but they are legit.
No, they are. So I'm just going to, by the way, they're almost top 10 in offensive and defensive rating now. They obviously
they're 11th in offense.
They're 11. I mean, they're right on the cusp of sort of how you can measure historically, normally, with a couple exceptions, and those exceptions are Kevin Durant and Shaq. That's how you're a championship level team if you're in the top 10 in both. I'm just going to double down on what I'm in. I love the Rockets. I just think they're ahead of schedule.
Yes.
I think nights like last night and some of those individual performances are a sign of things to come. I'm just not convinced yet that they're going to generate the offense they need, maybe in fourth quarters, maybe against better competition. I'm not sure what Memphis is all the time in playoff series yet, but they are ahead of the Magic. And I think mimicking the Thunder in that they have the right coach, they're trending in the right direction. They already have a core of what I think is a championship level team. Well, I think they need Giannis time, and all of this is gravy. And when the gravy has you as the second best team in the West, the future is bright.
So you mentioned that they're almost top 10 in offense and defense. And this is why, while they absolutely cannot shoot, they
can't shoot.
They are a terrible shooting team.
Yeah.
27th in field goal percentage and 28th in 3-point percentage. And you look at that and you're like, how are they then 11th offensively? I kind of think of this. I know you're a superhero Marvel guy, right? Like you watch those movies. I watch them. So I think I've made this analogy before, but I'm going to do it again anyway. In Endgame, when the Hulk turns Ant-Man into a baby, when they're trying to like figure out the time portal thing.
Great scene.
And everybody's like, this is a disaster. And he's like, what? I see this as a win, because he knows, look, we kind of figured it out, but once we really iron out the wrinkles, think about how good we'll be. This is how I look at the Rockets. They're still kind of figuring it out, and they've got some wrinkles to iron out. But if they figure out where to get some shooters, or failing that, how to shoot, I think they could be really good.
Yeah. By the way, can you say Iron Man out the wrinkles? Can I just go back and Iron Man out?
There? That
was ugly. Yeah,
I have
a joke. I'm a dad. Sorry.
No, I love that joke. And I'm not even a dad. So producer Aaron brings this up, and this is something that I've been harping on for a long time. I have created an Amin Thompson Appreciation Society. I've talked about it here on this show, and I've started one online on Blue Sky with some other Amon Thompson enthusiasts. Producer Aaron says that Amon Thompson really needs to be in the starting lineup. He was previously the sixth man. Jabari Smith ended up hurting his hand. He's out for at least a month, maybe two. What do they do when Jabari comes back? Because I like Jabari in the starting lineup as well, but I don't know how you can take Amon Thompson out when he has this much impact on the team. Bill, he's a double-double machine. Last night he had two blocks. He's everywhere.
By the way, I feel like you're cheating on Şengün sometimes when because that was your guy last year. But
I know.
Can we just put it? You're right, and it's the interesting context because last year when Şengün went down, it was like, all right, they've been a nice story and they've been plucky, but he was their best player, and they just kept on keeping on, and they made that push without him. So I think you stick with the hot hand, and I think you, I mean,
I think it'd probably be from me, Dylan Brooks, that would go to the bench.
I kind of like what Dylan Brooks brings, though.
I know, and they do need shooting, they do need scoring, and that toughness is good. But I just
the nastiness,
the nastiness. Although last night the nastiness did not play to their favor because he got after Desmond Bane a little bit in that game, and then Desmond Bane went on an absolute heater. Now they ended up winning the game.
Desmond Bane,
is
Desmond Bane the most underrated player in the NBA? By the way,
we should do an underrated show.
We should because whenever I see him do his thing,
You mentioned that I'm cheating on Alperen Şengün with Amon Thompson. I'm kind of cheating on the Grizzlies with the Rockets.
Yeah, you claim everybody. Like, how many teams there's a lot of good young teams, though, to be fair.
I've really been, unlike as much as I like the inside the NBA TNT crowd and some of these other people who said the basketball product hasn't been very good this season, I think the product has been amazing. I'm having a really good time this year.
I don't understand that argument. By the way, like, I love that show, but there is some truth to the fact that the old man sort of get off my lawn reality. The products, I think, it's a different the product is great. That's not the same thing as, do you have a generational talent who's the most important player in the game who reaches 100%. Out to neutrals? Like LeBron and Steph have been the gravitational pull for years for the NBA to pull in people like my buddies who like the NBA but don't love the NBA. So that's a different conversation. But that shouldn't apply to Chuck. That shouldn't apply to Shaq. That shouldn't apply to Kenny. I am actually finding that increasingly annoying.
Yeah, for them to be, to spend a lifetime in the game and to look at, I don't know how you could watch a game like last night between the Grizz and the Rockets that was fun from start to finish and not really enjoy yourself. Right. And there's not, Ja Morant maybe is like the biggest single star power player in that game. And he's not in the top 10 in the NBA, but game was super fun.
I mean, go down the list, right? Thunder are mesmerizing. The Rockets, who I've seen in person, they're obviously really good. They're fun to watch. They're young, they're athletic, they're dynamic, they're really well coached, they play really hard. I'm just going to go on the stand. Grizzlies are fascinating. I'll watch the Nuggets any night because of Joker. The Mavs were when they were healthy, right? They're obviously not.
When they're healthy.
I mean, just the Clippers I can't watch. They're like the Magic for me of the West. I know you love. I can't do it. The Lakers have LeBron, so I'm NAD. I'm here for it. The Timberwolves have Ant. The Kings are winning games. I could pass on the Kings, even though they do a high octane. The Suns are, the Spurs have Wemby. The Warriors have, dude, I'm 12 teams deep, and 10 of the Western Conference teams are really compelling in just in terms of individual talent and storylines.
On any given night, I'll watch any game, but getting down to like the Blazers and the Jazz is where I'll draw a line. But beyond that,
that's a good line.
I'm in. Let's go. Producer Aaron brings up a good point on this too. How much of this, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but I do think it's important. Like, how much of this, concerning Barkley and Shaq is just, the older generation, the older guys forever in every sport always think that, back in my day was better.
Okay, I love Shaq, and he's actually a great guy, and I'm sure you've had interactions with him.
He's awesome.
I have on tape somewhere, I was interviewing him, and we were in a break, and he picked up water, drank it, looked at me, realized it was my water, made this horrific face, like, oh my God, I've got Bill Ryder germs. But Shaq has a little bit of insecurity that sort of, I think, is a through line throughout his comment. Every big man sucks. It's always, so I buy it for Shaq's always done that, right? Like, I'm the best and other people aren't. And I love Shaq. Shaq is great to people sort of beneath him. Shaq is not nice to contemporaries. So, okay, cool. Got it. But Charles is supposed to be a straight shooter. And I think he is doing a disservice to that coverage.
This
And
isn't new though. Going back to
I
remember when the Warriors really started to become the Warriors
yeah,
at the beginning of their run, and they just wouldn't shut up about how jump shooting teams can't win
can't win when
championships,
shooting the
and then
3.
they rattled off 4. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. They're you know what?
It's
I like
true.
to
You're
put
right.
them I like to put them in the they are wholly entertaining bucket, and I almost never miss a post-game show because
Show's
it's just
great.
leading in. It's just super fun, but, like, in terms of actual basketball content, I just kinda let that go in one ear and out the other because
It, it's like hanging out with your 4 buddies, drinking beers, talking hoops, who don't know it as well as you do, but are really, I mean, they
I
obviously know it
got
better
so
than
many of
us,
those
but
guys.
are so funny.
Yeah.
Like it's a party, but yeah, you're not really there for the like let's say that they're from Philly. Like, no, Philly's not gonna win a championship this year, but this is a really fun conversation anyway, kind of a but I'm
I
with
have
you.
so
Like
many
the
I have
product's
so
so
many of those
good.
people in my life where they'll talk hoops at me, and I'm like, "I don't know, man. I do this for a living." The
Me
Grizz.
too. You just listen. I just listen. I don't
I just
argue
listen. I'm
anymore.
like, "That's
My
fantastic. That's a good take."
at kids pickup, like my kid, like the dads of my kids' friends, like are lecturing me. I'm like, yeah, no, that's a great. No, the Lakers are definitely the favorites to win the title. Okay, well, I
Yeah.
gotta go get Henry.
Let me
Great talk.
let me mention that on the show tomorrow. Uh,
John will
so
love to hear it.
so the Grizz, I I've mentioned to you, I really think that they're a complete team. They're fantastic. The Rockets have their
Yeah,
number. Independent of last night, they're first in points per game, Bill, in the NBA. They're second best point differential in the Western Conference. The problem, as I see it, is twofold with the Grizzlies. One, Ja has to be healthy. And two, Ja and all of them have to make better decisions because last night there were so many times, and we've discussed this, where it's baked into Ja's the way he plays. He's so dynamic and he's so athletic and he is a freak of nature when he's going to the rack at 1,000 miles an hour, but frequently he does so without a plan. There were, like, I don't know, 4 times last night where he jumped in the air with absolutely no plan of what to do with the ball. He had several seriously costly turnovers last night, and this has been a theme for them all season. They are next to last in the NBA in turnovers. Only the Jazz have had more. And if they could just get him
yes,
and themselves under control a little bit more, I think that would, like, really supercharge them.
I am. I'm in on the Grizzlies if you guaranteed me a reasonable guarantee that John Morant's going to be healthy for the duration and for the
Healthy
playoffs.
is the number one. Yeah.
But for me, he's reached. I don't think it's unfair. It's just Zion levels of uncertainty because they
Mhm.
are. I was trying to look it up. I think they're top 5 in offensive and defensive rating. I think that is correct.
Let
And
me
if that's
check.
correct, I mean that is a whole other level of likelihood. I'm doing this off the top of my head, but of
They are
likelihood of
5 in offense and they are 7 in defense.
okay, so they're close, right? I mean, it's a
Yes.
really
It's a good
they're
team.
a they're a really good team, and I think like I want to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt to have nights like last night where you played a really good team, but there's a higher ceiling for Memphis that normally at this part of the process you'd expect to see more consistently. But Ja's been hurt so much, and they haven't played together for the last 2 years consistently that they're a work in progress who are still. I still think they're the 3rd or 4th best team, or maybe higher in the West. So I'm still high on Memphis. I think this
Me
is a
too.
bigger testing ground for the Rockets than it was for the Grizzlies. But to your earlier point, I just every time Ja jumps in the air, whether he has a plan or not, I'm worried he's going to come down and break into 50 pieces like Humpty Dumpty.
That and what's he doing? Sometimes it works out to just be really spectacular, and sometimes you're like, "Oh no, that was an absolutely horrible idea. What are you doing? You're really hurting the team." And he wasn't the only one who did that last night. Bane had a couple of turnovers that were
Yeah.
costly. The whole team is really, really sloppy with the ball, and if they just had a little bit more thoughtfulness about how they're going, like making smart plays instead of like the spectacular dazzling play, I just think like a game like last night where you're up 13 on the road against a really good Rockets team and you just let it slip away, especially when Bane went on that heater. It was there for them.
I also think the Rockets are in a really particularly interesting, challenging matchup for them because Houston is so physical and they're so long, and they get in they force mistakes on I think teams that make fewer of them, and Memphis makes a lot of them. I mean that again, we've had this. Are the Rockets going to be consistent enough offensively with their shooting woes to make a deep run in the playoffs? Probably not. But I think the Rockets are the kind of team that can't beat everybody, but can almost beat anybody because Ime Udoka does have those guys schooled. And you know how it is where it's different. You see them in person. It's just it's different than watching on TV. Having seen them Houston in person a couple times, they're in your grill. They're in your face. They make life hard on you. And I think like John Morant And his teammates, because of Ja, is used to being the most physically dominant player on the. Ja can impose himself physically on most teams. Like that's his game. I think he has to work a lot harder, and that whole team does against the Rockets than they do against most teams. And it compounds what's already a problem with just being cautious, taking your time, not turning the ball over, thinking things through. I think normally they can get away with some of that. Against the Rockets, they make life really hard.
They
so
do make
good.
life hard on you.
Yeah.
And you know what? We should give credit to them because, you know, again, Amin Thompson had the Ja assignment for a lot of last night. It's not all just Ja making some bad decisions. It's that, like, what do you do with Amin Thompson when he's all over you and he's just a whirling dervish on defense? I want to make one more Grizz point. We're going to take a timeout, and then on the other side, I'll make that Grizz point, and then we'll get into Spurs and Lakers coming up. This is Beyond the Arc. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. A reminder, you can get us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Please download, subscribe, leave a review, and then on Spotify, if you look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, you can leave us a comment about what you think. Last Grizz point before we move on here, Bill. I think we default to Ja's the best player on that team. I don't mean this isn't like hot takey. This is he's having an unbelievable season. Is Triple J the best player on that team? He's the most consistent.
It's interesting.
He's definitely an all-star this year. He's going to make first team all defense, I think, unless something goes wrong. And he's going to get serious consideration for all NBA. He's been so good, so consistent, so reliable all season long. I don't know if he's the best player, like full stop, going forward for their careers, but this season he has been.
Maybe I'm going to get into the semantics. This is what producer Aaron likes to do. He likes to do wordplay instead of answering the question. Maybe he's the most important player this year.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And what he does and the sort of breadth of what he does. Because John Morant, because you said, I think John Morant plays an entire year. I think he could be a top 10 player in the NBA. I mean, there's a lot of, to our earlier conversation, there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of competition for that. I think Josh is probably the best player on the team, but most important, most impactful this season, most necessary.
That's just like a light dusting, a little preview of Overreaction Tuesday that we'll do later in the show. But it's just something to think about.
Yeah, it's interesting.
He has been so good at both ends of the floor that without him, I think look, when Ja's not out there, they're a different team too. But without Triple J, I think they'd be sunk.
Real quick, because I just it's such a great point in the sense that in order to be an actual championship contending team, you have to have the kind of depth of great talent to be able to make a statement like maybe Ja's not our best player. And the fact that that's reasonable, that another guy who's not John Morant on the Grizzlies might be the best player, that even that conversation's out there, I think bodes really well for Memphis because you have to have 2 or 3 guys who can be incredibly impactful. See Denver to be able to get to where you want to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like while Ja's out there doing Ja stuff, and sometimes it's really awesome. And then sometimes you're like, oh no. Triple J is just steady. He's just steady. He's just there. He puts in a good effort every night. He guards whoever's thrown at him. He's steady. All right, let's move on to Spurs and Lakers. The Spurs won this one going away, Bill. Now, we should mention, life in LA has been difficult. The Lakers return home. Our thoughts go out to everybody who have been impacted by the fires. You and I live in LA. Thankfully, we live south of the airport. For people who aren't familiar with LA geography, we're pretty far away from the fires.
Great spot.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't. JJ Redick, for example, lost his home. It's been tough for them.
Yeah.
So, we're thinking about all that. But from a basketball perspective last night, how things ended for them wasn't great. The Spurs ended up winning this going away. They won the game by 24, Bill. They outscored the Lakers by 24 in the fourth quarter. I'm not great at math, but if you outscore a team by 24 in the fourth and you win by 24, one team had a really good fourth quarter and the other team was the Lakers. So tough one for LA and a really good win on the road for the Spurs.
I echo what you said about the fires, and it's awful, and there's obviously an impact, but it's not as if the Lakers were dynamic before this struggle. There's been inconsistency all year, and so we've talked about the rise of the Spurs and whether or not it happened this year. And last night's game, and maybe this is also a preview to Overreaction Tuesday. It was the first time I thought, are the Spurs going to finish higher than the Lakers, the Warriors, and the Suns?
They could.
It feels like it's in the realm of possibilities because, dude, they looked so much better in that fourth quarter. They looked like the team that. Oh, did I lose you guys?
No, you're there.
Oh, so weird. My internet just. Hello, podcast people.
We're looking at the We're looking at the standings right now. To your point,
I'm good at technology. Aaron, you totally threw me off with that. I'm like, oh, you guys are gone. Yeah, like in a game like that, the team that I expect to fight hard for 3 quarters and then completely collapse because they're not used to those sort of games. That really was trippy. If you're listening, you obviously have no idea what I'm talking about. That's why you head over to YouTube.
The standings got put up on
yeah, I was like, oh,
a little bit for a loop there.
They're gone. Good at broadcasting. I've never done this before, but I am in a comfortable Intuit Dome shirt, so that's good. It's like the Wemby-led Spurs that are relatively young that I expect to collapse against LeBron and AD in a fourth quarter. Not the Lakers.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at those teams that you mentioned between the Lakers and the Warriors and the Suns and the Spurs, 3 of those teams you have grave concerns about, and the other one's playing with house money, and that's the Spurs. The Spurs weren't supposed to be, except for you, Bill Reuter. Again, I keep giving you credit because you were one of the people who was like, and Tim McMahon from ESPN, he was also really bullish on the Spurs this year. But outside of you two, I don't think anybody expected them to be fighting for a play-in position right now, and they are tied with the Suns in terms of record for the 10th spot in the Western Conference. So it could be this year.
Based on form, based on this season, between the Suns, the Warriors, the Lakers, and the Spurs, Wemby is the what best player?
Oof, okay. Well, he's better than he's better than LeBron. He's around as good as AD, if not better, right? He's
second or third, KD and Steph.
KD and Steph. Yeah. I mean, that's where we are. This is the conversation. Yes, Steph is having a good season right now. KD is really good, but that's the mix, right? However you order them. If you're saying like, hey, and also he's a kid, right? And the other 2 guys, for as good as they've been, eventually, there's going to be some regression, right? As you get older, that's what happens. So he's been phenomenal. He was phenomenal last night. He had been on a streak of 4 straight games with a double-double. Didn't get to a double-double last night. Still went for 23, 8, and 5 with 3 steals and 2 blocks. If he's not the DPOY, I don't know who is. He's been that good. I mean, maybe Triple J would be in that conversation, but I don't think he's as good as, because he's not getting the same kind of minutes.
It's those 2 guys in Mobley, right? I think that's the list this year. Yeah. Oh,
and you know what? Tomorrow we're going to do our mid-season awards show on CBS Sports Network, and I got Mobley all over that thing. So we're gonna discuss that tomorrow. So come and join us on CBS Sports Network at 1 p.m. The Lakers, you were mentioning, even prior to the fires and being displaced and everything that's going on, haven't had a great season. A little bit of a misleading season because record-wise, they're still what? They're 7th right now in the Western Conference. They're 20-17. Could be worse, right? Well, our colleague Sam Quinn over at CBSSports.com wrote a piece off of that game last night being like, yeah, it's a little misleading though, because they got outscored in the paint last night, Bill, 66-40. This is a harbinger of things that have ailed them all season. They have They're 13th in offensive rating, which isn't great. They're 24th in defense. They're
so bad.
Yeah, it's so bad. And they're also 25th in rebounding. Like outside of AD, they're getting crushed down low. And of the top 10 teams in the Western Conference, Bill, only 2 have negative point differentials. Guess what? The Lakers are one of them. They actually have the worst among the top 10 teams. They're underwater minus 2.7. All these metrics just point to, they're winning some games. They've got LeBron and AD, but on most nights, like they've got serious flaws.
They're 22nd in net rate. I look at Basketball Reference. I don't know. It varies a little bit from site. They're 22nd in net rating. I mean, they're bad. So, the number. And the thing is, LeBron the last few years has had to pace himself. He is a 40-year-old. It's reasonable to think that he can't play at the highest level for all of the minutes of the entirety of the year. He's still great. But I don't think LeBron used to be able to make these charges, right? Like when he was in Miami, it could start in December. When he was in Cleveland, it would start sometimes in January. He would sort of go into high gear. We've seen it in LA at the end of seasons. You cannot ask LeBron James starting on January 18th or whatever to just take over and carry you to mid-April on his own. He doesn't have that anymore. And so I think there's a world where, based on the numbers and based on the fact LeBron is not going to be able to play Superman, and you never know with AD. I know he's been durable lately, but they might be worse, John. Like, this might be sort of high ground for them. Right.
Yeah,
I think it is.
the point differential thing is generally a pretty good indicator of where you're going to shake out, what kind of team you have. And for them to be the only team in the top 10 with a negative point differential, that makes me a little concerned, especially because you do have the Spurs behind you and you do have the Warriors who at present are on the outside of the play-in looking in, but their metrics look slightly better. Now, I've got some issues with the Warriors that I'm going to bring up later in the show, but yeah, I would be worried if I'm the Lakers right now. And I'm not sure what you do because everybody, we talked about it. What do you do at the trade deadline? Do you go and add another piece? They already went and swapped out D'Lo for Dorian Finney-Smith. I like that move. On paper, it makes sense, but I don't think that Dorian Finney-Smith he should improve your defense. I don't know that he's going to all of a sudden accelerate your rebounding. And you also have shooting problems, right? So who's this magical unicorn of a player that you can go out there and get who's going to address all these problems? I don't think you're going to find anybody who's going to make them a championship contender. Just put that out the window. But is there somebody out there that they could identify that's gettable that could at least make them, as we already said in the Western Conference, it's OKC and everybody else, that could make them a serious everybody else team like the Rockets, the Grizzlies, the Nuggets? No,
there's not. I don't think they're getting to that level. The Suns are handcuffed. They want Jimmy Butler. By the way, breaking news from Shams. Suspended Heat star Jimmy Butler tells Pat Riley in face-to-face meeting that he wants to be traded and will not sign a new deal in Miami. So it's sort of what we knew, but I guess delivered to Riley. But barring Bradley Beal, I don't understand. There's no scenario where it makes sense to me that Butler can force his way to the Suns. So I don't see how the Suns can do it. I guess maybe the Warriors feel like they're a piece closer, but I don't think there's a reasonable name with the Lakers that's out there, John, that you can tell me is going to go to LA. And I'm going to say that is now a team that could win multiple playoff series, like the Rockets can, like Memphis can, like Denver can. I'm not sure I come down to Minnesota. So obviously, like the Thunder can. I don't see it for the Lakers. I don't.
At which point now we're back to the question that we've asked many times on the show, wouldn't it maybe be better for the Lakers and LeBron to think about hey, if it's not this year, maybe we do need to have an amicable parting of the ways where it's you'll get better, I'll get to a better situation. It makes more sense. I know he wants to stay. He's said multiple times, the plan is to end his career in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is a great city. And I get it. He's playing with his kid, nominally. But if you have any shot of one last, you're pulling, we're going to get the team together and do one last job.
Oh, one last job,
one last heist,
like Rick and Morty. Damn it, you son of a bee! I'm in. That's a great episode. So all right. Let's say that he's not going to want to be traded. I think he wants to live in LA. I haven't heard anything that indicates that.
Yeah,
but it's the right call from a basketball
it's
perspective.
Right there, right?
Where do you go?
Numbers don't lie.
Are you gonna jump on the Jimmy dysfunction, look for a three-way trade? Because he's not going back to Miami, and that doesn't make sense. Where does he go to Memphis?
Golden State would be the one that
the Warriors
that I'd want. Yeah, partner up with Steph. We saw how much they got out of that two-man action in the Olympics. I think it would work. I do. Okay, let me rephrase. I think it would work. I want to see it.
I want to see it too.
So
you're sending LeBron to the Warriors and whatever Kuminga,
Wiggins, whatever else needs Pajemski, whatever. Yeah.
So Draymond, LeBron, Steph are basically the core of that team. It'd be fun to watch.
It would be fun.
It would be fun.
It would be fun. Let's take another break, and then on the other side, we'll get into some other Western Conference teams. We got the Nuggets, the Kings, the Suns to talk about. We'll do a couple overreactions. We'll do Team of the Night. All of that coming up. This is Beyond the Arc.
I feel home when I see the faces that remember my own. When I'm with my friends, I feel home.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. You can find us on YouTube most days, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, at Beyond the Arc CBS over there. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and the little bell symbol. If you click on that, you'll get notified when we go live. Bill, yesterday, you mentioned something intriguing about the Nuggets. The Nuggets are, we know they've got Joker. I think that they've kind of settled in here. They're pretty solidly the fourth best team in the Western Conference. I'm not worried about them as I was earlier in the season. They've won 3 in a row, 7 of the last 10. Solidly fourth in offensive rating. Defensively, they have some room to improve, 18th there, right? But over their last 15 games, they're second in offensive rating. They're really plugging along. And part of the reason why they're plugging along is a guy that you flagged, Russell Westbrook. And you asked me, like, am I now finally sold on Russ? And I was like, he has been playing better. He's looked really good in the starting lineup alongside Joker. Now, Joker makes everybody look good. But I went back and looked over their last 15 games with Russell Westbrook, like not playing like YOLO Russ, just like being really athletic and giving a full effort. The on-off numbers are really good. They're plus 11 when he's on the floor and minus 3 with him off. And it's like, can Russ keep doing this? Like, can he just be part of the system? If he can, this is good.
It's really interesting because, like, to my eyes, I thought I was going to ask you yesterday. I don't think I did. I don't think I had the guts, but I was going to ask you, is he the second best player in that team? Because that's what it's looked like lately.
Okay.
That was the question I meant to ask you.
Now we get into the second part of this, which gets really interesting. So I'm looking at these on-off numbers and I'm like, Jamal Murray during this streak of the last 15 games.
Oh, no.
Plus 2.1 when he's on the floor. Plus 17.5 when he sits, Bill. They are considerably better. Now, look, they're not moving Jamal Murray to the bench. Jamal Murray and the two-man action is still good with those two guys. But Jamal Murray, from the playoffs of last season, minus those 2 games where he hit game winners, through the Olympics, through this season, through signing the new contract, has not really been Jamal Murray, and that's concerning.
So do you believe, can you hang on to the life raft of an idea that Jamal Murray is going to figure it out in the playoffs? Because we've seen it before, but normally it was injury and not really being that's just concerning.
It's concerning. Now, look, he's not going anywhere. He's staying in the starting lineup. I think the question becomes, you've got Aaron Gordon. You need him for defense. Net rating, by the way, they're 5th in net rating over this stretch. So they've been really good. Again, I like the way that the Nuggets are playing. I think initially the theory of the case was KCP leaves and they're going to move Christian Braun into the starting lineup. And I think Christian Braun's been good this season.
I do too. Yeah.
But I think that the answer is probably Christian Braun back to the bench as your super sub 6 man. And I can't believe I'm saying this. I think you have to leave Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup.
What's crazy about Westbrook, 15 games is a real sample size. Playing a better version, a less obnoxious version of Russell. Like, to your
obnoxious,
not bleeping stuff up, is he couldn't do that with James Harden. He couldn't do that with Paul George. Now, he was still sort of a star, right? He still couldn't do that with LeBron James and AD. It's interesting that for whatever reason, I don't know if it's Michael Malone or if it's playing with the best player on earth or maybe he's just figured out I'm not that guy, but there has been an adjustment and a change that we have literally never seen in his entire career from Russell Westbrook.
This has been for the last, for both LA teams, right? Everybody was like, if Russ would just play within his role.
Both LA teams, yeah.
He would just play within his role. Like, what could Russell Westbrook do in the latter stages of his career? And I had given up hope that he would ever even try. That, he was so ball dominant, so high usage rate, so in his own head about being a superstar and a Hall of Famer and a former MVP that, like, he's never going to just accept the role that they're asking him to do and play within the confines of it. So I think obviously, like, having Joker there makes it easier, but he's doing it right now.
Here's a theory that I just thought of, and maybe I'm giving Russ way too much of a pass, but maybe this is the first time he's ever been somewhere and actually believed that if he plays the right way, they can win a championship. They can be competitive.
Okay.
Maybe he never bought it anywhere else.
So this is my next question then. Going forward for this season, is it smarter, just because we've seen over this 15-game sample size that Russell Westbrook has been really good in the starting lineup, to leave him there because you have championship aspirations and you have a non-zero chance of winning one because you have the best player in the NBA? Right. Or do you stick with the original plan, which is prioritizing the growth of Christian Braun, who might have to take a little bit of a hit or have his development arrested a little bit by moving back to the bench?
I'm going to point to the Warriors as a reminder that you never know when windows close, and you want to take advantage of every opportunity when you have the best player on earth. I think you do whatever maximizes the likelihood that Russell Westbrook will continue to be the less obnoxious version of Russell Westbrook, and you get the best version out of him so that you can increase your margin of potentially being better. Which is to say, I'm sticking with, if Russ is doing the right things, I reward him for it. So he keeps doing things so that we have a higher likelihood of some success.
Also, I'm a ride the hot hand kind of guy, and he's a hot hand right now, and he's shooting the lights out on the corner 3. And look, Christian Braun is a good player. I think he could help the bench unit. I'm fine with that. I'd leave Russ exactly where he is.
Put up, he's shooting. This can't be right. He's shooting 42% from 3 in the fourth quarter this season.
Yes, I didn't know the fourth
What
quarter numbers, but the corner
believe
3 numbers are also
corner
I
three,
mean,
but that's
he's been
clutch.
good.
All
Yes,
right.
yes. All right, so we've
That
solved
that
that.
is
We're
not
leaving him there.
sustainable for all
We
those nice
no.
words. That is
Flash
not
forward,
sustainable.
flash forward 2 weeks from now, and we're like, what were we thinking? Move Russ back to the bench.
Right.
All right, let's go to the Kings. Kings have won 7 in a row, Bill, over this stretch. 3rd in defensive rating, 7th in offensive rating. A little bit of smaller sample size than what we were talking about with the Nuggets in their 15-game stretch, but still, 7 games in a row is very good for the Kings, considering that they fired Mike Malone in the car over the phone on his way to the airport. By the way, when they fired Mike Brown, when they fired Mike Brown, by the way, they were 17th in defensive rating. This was something that Mike Brown had flagged previously, because a couple of seasons ago, when they were the best offense in the NBA, Mike Brown changed the way that they played afterwards, because he said, if we're going to be a championship caliber team, we've got to be better at the defensive end of the floor. They just weren't with him. They couldn't figure it out. They're starting to figure it out here. It's kind of amazing what happens when you play your best defensive player in Keon Ellis, how much that changes the complexion of your team.
That's a lot of it. I'm also gonna, again, I don't.
You're a little
report on that
skeptical.
team. Well, I'm more just, I think it's about these guys hating Mike Brown, because it's not as hard to motivate guys to try to succeed offensively, because guys like to score, but there's a lot that goes into being a good defense. But the players being willing to work hard for their coach and or each other, the team, is something. And the effort has improved dramatically since they fired this guy. I mean, you can preach defense all you want. If the team hates the guy, and I know he's a defensive dude, but they didn't work hard for it. They didn't play hard for him.
I mean, his analysis of what the team needed, Mike Brown's, I think was right. But I guess Mike Brown was the imperfect messenger. Maybe Doug Christie, for whatever he's doing, communicating with them. Again, Malik Monk flagged this and said he knows how to talk to us. He's a former player. Sabonis was discussing the vibes being better. So I guess that, everybody getting along and rowing in the same direction can be beneficial. Now, some of these games, they had a really good win without De'Aaron Fox against the Celtics. Some of these wins, maybe a little bit questionable. The upcoming schedule here, Bill, is really going to tell a lot. So they've got their next game here is at the Bucks, then they're home against the Rockets and the Wizards, then the Warriors, Nuggets, and Knicks. Some tough games in there.
It's a stretch. No, they beat the Celtics. They beat Memphis in this winning streak. I know the Warriors and the Heat have been, but there's a desperation for those teams, right? The Heat without Jimmy have been are despite the fact they won, I think 3 in a row at some stretch in there, are not very good. But yeah, they're going to be tested. But I think they're not going to win all these games. But there's reason to think maybe they are the team we thought they were going to be, which is to say a team that's good enough to compete to be the 6th seed ish in the West.
Yeah, I had them in the play-in, and I had the Warriors on the outside. And earlier in the season, that looked really stupid. I mean, especially when the Warriors got off to a 12-3 start. But now all of a sudden, the Kings, look, I was not on board with them firing Mike Brown. I certainly wasn't on board with them firing Mike Brown in the way that they did it. But sometimes you do need to change things up and shake things up. I mean, you and I are both big soccer fans. Soccer clubs are never squeamish about this. They fire coaches left and right. They're just like, whatever. And the NBA, you tend to
you win the whole thing, and 3 months later you're gone.
Sometimes maybe a little shakeup is good, and we're seeing that with the Kings. One more team that I wanted to talk to you about in the Western Conference is the Suns. And the Suns have been playing better of late. They've won 3 in a row. They're back to 500. I believe they are 10th in the standings here? Yeah, they're 10th in the standings. Yeah. So they're tied with the Warriors record-wise. They're tied with the Spurs record-wise, but they would be the 10th seed if the season ended today. I was thinking to myself, okay, KD's playing, he's healthy, kind of like what you and I were talking about earlier in the season. But the more I looked at the numbers, the more I start to get worried about the Suns. So they are back to 500, but they're 3-8, Bill, versus teams with a top 10 net rating. They're 19th in net rating, and they're one of, as I mentioned, 2 teams in the Western Conference with a negative point differential, the other being the Lakers. There's a lot of things here in terms of construction, in terms of the metrics, the highest payroll in NBA history. They've backed themselves into this whole situation with deep into the second apron. I think this is kind of a mirage with the Suns, and I'm waiting for the wheels to come off. And then how long until KD goes, I'm good, I got to get out of here.
If you are talking about the actual playoffs, making the actual play, I could see these guys and the Warriors and the Lakers all missing the playoffs.
which would be
Obviously,
wild.
one of them at least. Lakers are going to make the play in it. Yeah,
What a disaster that would be for the league. If you have no
it's horrible.
KD, no LeBron, no Steph, no AD, that would be a disaster.
And we've been trending toward that the last few years, right? Because we've had some years where LeBron would miss or Steph would miss. It is a disaster. And it gets back to our earlier conversation. There's still going to be great games, just the casual fans not going to be as interested. The Suns aren't very good. I mean, Kevin Durant's amazing, but all the reasons you just walked us through. I mean, Kevin Durant's amazing.
So that's
they're not good.
In the same, for the same reasons that we outlined with us wanting LeBron to move on for the Lakers and it making sense for both sides. Same with the Suns and KD. I know that Ishbia is like digging in here on KD not going anywhere, and he loves him, and we're going to re-sign him to a deal. But like, are you really going to pay KD with the, like, you've seen enough of a sample size right now? You're going to give him an extension that's probably going to be like what, 2 for 120 or something ridiculous like that. But are you going to do that when proof of concept hasn't really shown any return on investment here? We keep saying that like when KD plays, they're a good team, right? And they are. The problem is that with Booker and KD, they're 16-6. That's good, right? They're only outscoring their opponents by 1.6 points per 100 possessions. So they're winning those games, but just barely. And then they've got roster construction issues where who's the center? They put Nurk in the doghouse. Miles Plumlee ain't it? Is it like, I don't know, Oso Iguodaro? Like, what are you doing?
Sure. We've talked a lot about players that are up or down. The maybe least impressive NBA person of the last year and a half or 2 years is Matt Ishbia. And what he has built, he believes in. And he's stubborn. And I don't know. I think there's enough sample size to say he's bad at being an NBA owner so far. Now, the good thing about being an owner of a sports team is you get many years to figure it out. You don't age out. But they don't have any options other than they're not good enough to win an NBA championship. They may not be good enough to make the play-in. They're probably not good enough to make the playoffs. And their solution is you have to trade. You have to trade Kevin Durant if you're going to do some sort of rebuild on the run. And they're not going to do it. I mean, think about the return. And you've flagged this before. This is your thing. But think about the return you could get from the Rockets. And maybe the Rockets would hesitate, but I think it would make, you'd have to unspool some really impressive pieces that have been a significant reality. But if you make the right trade and you're the Rockets, you are a championship contender this year with Kevin Durant.
I mean, the Rockets really have done a smart thing here where they're playing sort of like 4-dimensional chess in terms of like seeing down the road, because they don't need to make a move right now. But I think that the Rockets rightly look at this situation in Phoenix the way that you and I do, dispassionately, and go, okay, we don't need to make a move right now. If you're not going to unplug KD, then you are welcome to be barely a marginal play-in team if you want, and you can re-sign KD and be quote unquote relevant, or you could reboot your franchise because we control your draft for the next however many years. They went and got a whole bunch of Phoenix picks back, right, from in that swap-a-roo with the Nets. So if Phoenix wants to reboot their team and control their own draft, Houston is the natural trade partner. It would make sense both ways. Okay, look, this isn't really working. We need to get out of cap hell. We can rebuild around Devin Booker, and we can get our draft back. Yes, it will hurt because we're going to lose KD. But by the way, KD is on. How many more years are we going to get of like prime KD? He's, prime KD or top 10 KD. He is right now.
What is he right now? Well, he's what player in the world? Because I want to reframe it this way. Is he
top 10? I mean, top
5. I haven't thought through that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to
maybe top 5.
Think about it.
Top
6.
Every single team in the NBA, I'm sorry, John, other than Embiid, if you want to put him on this list, who has a top something player, top 5, 6, 7 player in the world, is at least maybe the Bucks or everybody's. This is the worst team in the NBA with a player this good, which says a lot about the Suns.
Yeah.
Outside of Philly, which is its own careening disaster. I'm sorry, but like you have Joker. You're incredible. Even if your team is not constructed the way that you want it to be. You have Giannis. Your team's not amazing, but they're going to be a playoff
solid
team,
playoff team,
play-in team. I mean, just kind of like go down the list.
Then you get into the Warriors with Steph, right? I mean, Steph.
Oh, that's true.
The Warriors are outside of the play-in looking in right now.
I'm not sure Steph is good anymore, is he?
Last
I hate
thing,
to say that.
Yeah. Last thing on the Suns here, upcoming schedule. This is where they absolutely need to make some inroads at the Hawks, at the Wizards, at the Pistons, who by the way are playing really well this season.
Yeah.
At the Cavs, that's a tough one, and then they're home to the Wizards. They got to come out of that. I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4,
3 and 2,
5, 6 games. Yeah, 4 and 2.
4 and 2. They're not going
tough.
to. They're not.
Yeah. It is. Good luck. Overreaction Tuesday. Let's do one each. Team of the night. All right, you do 2.
All right. Heat are in for some darkness and some doldrums. I know that a little bit of a stretch, but their offense is cratered. We just talked about the Shams report that Jimmy basically had a face-to-face with Riley, which I'm sure was incredibly pleasant and polite in both directions. Their schedule gets a little bit harder. I think that they've masked how bad they're going to be without Jimmy. There's, some like scheduling, some nice little scheduling realities. I think in a week or 2 or 3, if Jimmy's not gone, we're going to be talking about how awful this basketball team has been.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a weird situation, man. It's unlike them to be so unusually, like usually they're just a really solidly run organization, right? And now it's like, no, they're this internecine warfare, this internal fighting and drama is tearing them apart, and they can't get rid of them fast enough. Here's my old man shakes fist at cloud take. I understand that the kids love LaMelo Ball. He is number 1 in fan voting. This dude should not be an all-star. The more I look at his numbers, the more I'm like, he's just out there freelancing. I call him YOLO LaMelo. He's the TikTok version of an NBA star come to life. I don't get it. He leads the NBA in field goal attempts per game. He's taking 3.2 more field goal attempts per game than number 2, who is Joker, Bill. That gap is as big between LaMelo and Joker as the gap between Joker and Jalen Brunson, who is 19th on the list. He's incredibly inefficient. His effective field goal percentage, I won't even get into it, but it's brutal. When he plays, the Hornets are 7-18 this season, and they have the 29th best offense out of 30 teams in the NBA. I get, again, that the kids love to watch this guy play, but what is he actually bringing to the Hornets? He's ahead in the voting of Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Cade Cunningham, who's having a make the leap season and might be the most improved player when the award is handed out at the end of the year. Damian Lillard, Trae Young, several Celtics. If he makes the All-Star team, it's an abomination.
I'm trying to get LeVar back on the phone to talk about the return of the balls, because now one of them is a rapper. Legitimate. So I'm not going to mention your very accurate perspective on this kid.
Or LiAngelo, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I don't really do rants, but that was my rant. And I had to get it off my chest.
You feel better, right?
I do feel about it's just there's so many deserving basketball players who are having incredible seasons that are valuable. Yeah. And then there's this guy, it's like an and one mixtape. What are we doing?
All right, hold on. You're not wrong, but let me just reframe this. All right. It's not LaMelo's fault. This is who he is. It's the process's fault. Don't let fans vote. This is why populism doesn't work. I mean, come on. Don't let the fan. Some 13-year-old somewhere is voting to get it. No, just have a different approach and system to how this thing works.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want some deserving players to make it, and he's going to make it, and it's absolutely ridiculous. You said you have another one.
I think the Knicks aren't good enough to win a championship this year. I mean, not just based on a bad loss.
Yeah, that
in the
loss
back of my
great.
mind, the defense is bad. I'm a cat skeptic in the playoffs. They're really, really good. I do not think that they're
fun.
They are really fun. And by the way, if I could pick one thing to happen this year in the NBA, one thing to happen, it would be the Knicks make the finals, because I want to cover a finals. I get to go to the finals for us.
Yeah, you love New York.
The Garden's magical. Knicks fans freaking relax. I am very skeptical that they're good enough. And I think they're going to lose to Cleveland or Boston. I could see them losing to someone they shouldn't in an opening round. I could just, the wrong matchup, they play the Magic. I could just see an upset happening that's not supposed to happen.
You were talking about the tiers in the Eastern Conference yesterday, and I think you were right. It's pretty clearly the Cavs and the Celtics in the top tier, and then it's the Knicks, and then it's everybody else. I would be surprised if they lost to anybody that wasn't the Cavs or the Celtics, because I do think they're good. The Pistons,
are they going to be healthy? Tibbs is going to keep playing these guys 42
Are they going to be healthy is a question. And you know what? It was a bad loss last night, but the Pistons are so much better this season. Cade Cunningham, again, when we do our midseason awards show tomorrow, I'm going to have a lot of Cade Cunningham conversation for you. Last one for me on Overreaction Tuesday. I know generally I've been trying not to talk about the Sixers. I just want to point out how hilarious their upcoming schedule is. So no Joel Embiid tonight with the Oklahoma City Thunder in town. Then they play the Knicks. Then they're at the Pacers, who are playing great. Then they're at the Bucks, who are just like, I don't know, a better team, even though they're not that great. Then they're at the Nuggets. Then they've got the Cavs again. Bill, this thing's cooked. They are barreling towards a season where they miss the playoffs and they have to ship their top 6 protected pick to Oklahoma City. In terms of Sixers disasters, and there have been many over the last 15 or 20 years, this is shaping up to be an all-timer for the Sixers.
So I don't know if you saw this. Nick Nurse's odds of being the next coach fired skyrocketed overnight for whatever reason. I think it's up to 9-1.
I mean,
yeah. Maybe they're seeing the wheels are going to.
They can't get Embiid on the floor. The schedule is really hard. They've been a bad team. They owe their pick. Like, unless they thread that needle and end up holding onto the pick, if they get lucky because the lottery balls bounce right, it'll save them from themselves. But there's a significant chance that doesn't happen, and they pull the double dip on this. And meanwhile, they're like, let's get a new arena.
Yeah, at least they haven't alienated their fan base of their city with arena shenanigans. So
I hate that team so much. All right, team of the night. I hate them.
I'm going to go with the Spurs. I think I've been doing this maybe too much.
Okay.
But I think that's a big win. I mean, a win against LeBron, a win against
good win.
That's a good win. That is a probable potential play-in rival, right? In terms of trying to jockey for space in a crowded field to get one of those 4 play-in spots. Nice victory.
Great win for them. Wearing my Spurs hat specifically for that. I was thinking about the Spurs. I'm going to go with the Pistons. They beat the Knicks at MSG last night. Cade goes for 36. He had 29 in the second half. Bill, they're 21-19. They're half game out of the 6th seed, which would put them in the playoffs proper. Like, we've talked a lot about the Spurs being ahead of schedule. The Pistons went from, they're already well ahead of their win total from last year, and we're only halfway through the season. They were abysmal last year. This is one of those situations where, like, it didn't work out for JB Bickerstaff in Cleveland, but a change of scenery has worked out nicely for everybody involved. Win-win all the way around.
You're right.
Pistons are fun. They went from an impossible watch and completely dysfunctional to, I might tune into the Pistons this tonight, and also they're good.
What a
first time for the Pistons, by the way.
Is it really? That feels like a bit of a we're sorry. That
overdue.
They've been overdue. Mm-hmm. What a bad look for Monty, by the way.
Yeah.
This season.
He's enjoying his contract there. He's getting paid for the next 4 years.
I'm sure he's enjoying whatever tropical island he's on.
Yeah, stick your feet in the sand, get a drink with a little umbrella in it. You're fine.
Still.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for us today. We're going to be back at it tomorrow. As I mentioned, we are live on CBS Sports Network at 1 p.m. Eastern. Come and join us. We're going to do our mid-season awards show. Should be a fun one. And as always, you can find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. But for now, for our NBA insider Bill Ryder, I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. See you tomorrow.